Well, hello. Come in. Let's sit down together this morning and let's just talk about the things that are on your heart today. But before we begin, it's helpful just, I think, to be quiet. And so let's just be still for a moment. And so let go of all the busyness that's rushing around in your head and just be still. So what's in your heart today? I think quite possibly one of the things that is in your heart is a deep desire for a greater spiritual growth, for some spiritual transformation. I mean, that's why you come in the morning to share this time with me. And I know that many people battle with this desire. It's a deep desire for spiritual growth. And the question of, where do I fit it in? And so what we have to do is to develop a life-giving rhythm where we're able to fit in our spiritual practices as well as the many other things that we have to do. But it's really important to remember this, that whatever rhythm you might hope to establish, it must be realistic in view of your particular stage of life. The rhythm of a young couple with a very young family is obviously going to look very different to that of a retired couple or to that of a single person. And if we don't take this into account, then we are doomed to fail. And that's why it's important that the rhythm you establish is for you and you alone. And it's not based on someone else's ideas. I know that sometimes people say to me, I don't have time for this. I wish I did, but I just don't have the time. Maybe when the children are grown up, maybe when I'm retired, maybe when we're tempted to say that. And the truth is that spiritual growth and spiritual development take place whenever we embrace the challenges and opportunities of each season of our lives, as the life is, as it presents itself to us. We have to come to a place of accepting that there's some things that simply cannot be changed in our particular life circumstances. And that in spite of those circumstances, we can establish a rhythm of life that accommodates them. That we can be compassionate with ourselves, just as God is. But there's another important aspect. It's important to balance our spiritual practices, because there's some practices that come really easy to us. And then there's those that actually we would rather not do because, well, they're not so comfortable. If you are an extrovert, then you might find solitude and silence something you would rather avoid. And if you're an introvert, then community involvement might be something that you would rather not do because it draws on your weaknesses rather than on your strengths. And that would be me. I would rather stay in my cave. And so I have to force myself out into community involvement. Because if we don't balance our spiritual practices, we tend to cultivate a one-sided spirituality. And then when we come under pressure, we don't cope because we haven't a wholeness to our spiritual practices. And so without community, the introvert will become isolated and disconnected from reality. And without solitude, the extrovert runs the risk of becoming shallow and unable to discern the voice of God. Without structure, the spontaneous and unstructured person becomes undisciplined and unfocused. And without some ability to go with the flow, the highly structured person can become rigid and very attached to a particular way of doing things, leaving little room to be surprised by God. So flexibility is the key word here. We must do what works. We must do what is life-giving, and we must do some form of it each day, but in line with what works in our particular circumstances that day. And it's a good thing to relook at our rhythm every 6 months. And so we must begin with the question of, how badly do you want to grow spiritually? How important is it to you? And to what extent are you willing to rearrange your life for what your heart most desires? And if this is something you truly want to do, then you need to listen to your heart. Notice the words, the phrases and the prayers that most capture for you a longing for God and a desire for spiritual growth. And then go to God and tell God that this is what you want and that you are willing to follow His lead, remembering that you cannot bring about spiritual growth on your own, that it comes to you as a pure gift as you make yourself available to God. If you forget that, then it becomes just another self-help program dependent on your own human efforts. So today, take time to listen to your experience with spiritual practices. Which spiritual practices that you do or have done are life-giving for you, and which have brought about the greatest real change in your life? Which have met the deep desires of your heart? Perhaps solitude, Lectio Divina, centering prayer, breath prayer, the examen, gospel contemplation, discernment, the Sabbath, intercessory prayer, dance, singing, prayer walking, writing, art. Today, consider which your heart desires most. Consider which God might be leading you into. And tomorrow we will look at ways of weaving these spiritual practices into a life-giving rhythm. God bless you and God keep you. Amen.